Jane Badasari, 20, single, a student of psychology in University of Santo Tomas. So, how did you familiarize the perspective of humanistic and behavioral?
Being a psych major, of course, I have taken up subjects on theories of personality and learning, which has exposed us in the humanistic and behavioral perspective. And especially now, I had the pleasure of actually applying it to my practical.
Oh, nice. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of this perspective?
First and foremost, the most disadvantage I'd like to start with the humanistic is that it uses insight. An insight is a personal judgment of a person to an individual if whether he or she is aware of the problem that she is experiencing. While in behavioral perspective, they do not use any insight but objectively assesses a problem based on the behavior itself. So it's very objective rather than subjective.
I see. In the context of child rearing, so what are the disadvantages and advantages?
The humanistic perspective teaches values, so
which is really important.
Yes, and that is the main or general point of this perspective, while the behavioral does not and focuses on the behavior itself, just like that, rather than the insight, is what I was talking about.
So generally speaking, we're talking about the child rearing part. How are you raised as a child?
My mother was Filipino, so I was generally raised in the Filipino culture. So I was raised in a humanistic perspective, being taught with values and morals.
Of course, Filipinos. So, what are the strengths of these perspectives? If you're gonna choose between one of the perspectives, what are you going to choose as a person?
As a psych major, I would, first of all, of course, I was raised in a humanistic perspective. Of course, I would unconsciously maybe apply it. And being a psych major, maybe I would choose, not maybe, I would choose the best both worlds.
Of course.
And
it's really important.
Yes, it's because when you really come to think about it, it's when you come to think about it, it's just really not the subject of when you really come to study the very essence of the behavior of a person. You would really come to understand and appreciate the both perspectives.
I see it. So that's it.
Hello, I'm Anna Fakini. I'm 24 years old, single, and I work as a researcher sa media. So I'm familiar with the two perspective, which is the behavioral tsaka humanistic perspective, because I took up psychology in the Constellation College, Manila. So yung una-una, yung behavioral perspective. So hindi ko masasabi kung meron siyang advantages or disadvantages. Kasi it always depended sa experiences ng parents, yung mga parents, kung paano rin sila pinalaki. So, and it always depende kung paano nila i-apply sa anak nila yung mga experiences na yun. When it comes naman sa humanistic perspective, it always depends naman by the book. Pero parents were not all aware sa mga theories, like mga Freudian theories, like that, mga Erickson's. Kaya hindi lahat makaka-relate sa humanistic perspective. So, for me, paano ko pinalaki ng magulang ko? Well, I guess, hindi ko masasabi kung sobrang pangit niya or sobrang ganda ng pagbabalaki ng magulang sa akin. Pero para sa akin, they apply more on behavioral perspective. Since na hindi naman din sila fully aware sa mga humanistic perspective na yan, na tulad na binanggit ko kanina, mga theories, mga personality theories na ganyan. may mga yung parents ko, hindi rin naman ganun din maganda yung mga naging experiences nila when they were a child, yung pagpapalaki sa kanila. Pero para sa akin, hindi rin naman ako magiging ganito ka-successful as a person kung hindi maganda yung pagpapalaki sa akin ng mga ko. So, last question is, kung tatanungin ako kung anong perspective na yung pipiliin ko sa pagpapalaki ko sa magiging future child, I guess it's more on humanistic perspective. Kasi mas naging aware ako sa mga theories, mga psychological theories, mga personality theories na natakal namin ng college na po.
I'm with Miss Jane Alagar, and she's a mother of one boy who will be turning 15 on Sunday. Anyways, Miss, how are you familiar with the perspectives in psychology, like the behavioral perspective?
Yeah, I don't, like what I've said, I don't like to use familiarity, but as a psychology major, of course, more or less we're familiar with the different schools.
That's good. But what are the advantages and disadvantages of these perspectives in terms of child rearing?
In terms of child rearing, well, I believe so the humanistic, there will be a tendency that you might spoil the child. But with the behavioral on the other, there's also a tendency that you might appear strict because you're limiting yourself, so yourself with the idea that there are other influences in the child's behavior.
So generally speaking, how were you raised as a child? So does it
the behavioral, I think, because my parents are too strict, they're authoritarian, they're always that's true. They always have this idea that they have to be choosy with regard to the school, to really screen my friends, because they believe that, of course, you are a reflection of your environment.
So assuming you can choose between the two, what are you going to choose?
I am humanistic. I'm humanistic by nature. I will not share you my story anymore, but the way I'm raising my child, I'm really very much humanistic. I know that people can change.
Nice. Alright, so that's it. Thank you, Miss. I really appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hello, I'm Charlene Corrito, and I graduated from De La Salle University, Manila, a degree in psychology. I'm currently single with no children, and I am connected with Accenture. I used to be in human resources in recruitment before, but then I got into IT right now. So I'm pretty familiar with the behavioral and the humanistic perspectives in general, since we studied it in high school, in college. Then, so I pretty much know the advantages of behavioral. I'm leaning towards it right now, especially that I'm practicing psychology. So behavioral is more of concentrating with the external, with the realistic, and with the things that has or can be used as evidence. Since I was raised by my parents in a behavioral way, they focus more on telling me about the external factors that can affect me as I grow up. On the other hand, humanistic naman is more of the internal, more of the quality of the person, how it develops, not really focusing on the things that occur outside of the person. So I think it's more idealistic, and I don't really believe much on it. So if I were to raise my own child, I'll be focusing more on the behavioral perspective. I think it's more useful for the person.
So, Char, thank
Hi, my name is
Ding Chu, 19, single student of Xavier University, and I am familiar of the two perspectives because of my course. I mean, it's related with my course because I'm taking up Bachelor of Science in Psychology. So for the first question, what are the advantages and disadvantages of child rearing in terms of the two perspectives? Well, in the behavioral perspective, there would be a tendency for the child to be too composed or too fixed to a certain spot in which he or she has to conform because and sometimes it could be disadvantageous because he or she might not be able to do freely what he or she really wants to do. But on the other hand, that fact could also be advantageous because he or she is focused to a certain goal in which he can achieve whatever that thing he or she has to achieve. And in this context, the child may become an authoritative in the end. On the other hand, in the humanistic perspective, this context would most likely enable the child to do freely whatever he or she wants to do, just as long as it's right, which is an advantage because he or she can try new things, and aside from that, he or she could do what he really wants to do and maybe develop that skill in the process. And also the disadvantage of this perspective is the child would become most likely lenient. And for the third question, I think I was raised more on the humanistic perspective with a little bit of the behavioral perspective. In terms of, like, for example, I can still do whatever I want to do just as long as it's under the right circumstances, but it should always be under my parents' supervision. Like, they should still know that I'm doing this or that, but the decision still comes from me. And for the fourth question, personally, I think I would choose the humanistic perspective because I think it is important in context of child rearing to let the children be like we should let them we should enable them to discover